Shalom, everyone. In the Nazarene, that's what we're called. There's something for the masses to see, and then there's something for the initiated to see. It's the darkness hiding in open view. We call them Wiccans, witches, warlocks, wizards, shamans. That's what they go by. It's poison doctrine. Well, we want to welcome everybody here that came and got out here on this cold morning. And we have a very interesting topic. Last time we studied The Stones Cry Out. If you haven't seen that one, it's really an interesting study in archaeology and anthropology, but mostly archaeology, the evidence of the name. And what we call things is very important. You know, we have a term that we're all familiar with. It's called a pseudonym. A pseudonym. It's a two-part word. Pseudonym is a false name. A false name. It's something you call something that's not really what it is. And we're called Nazarene because the first original followers of Yahusha were Nazarene. And later, centuries later, they began to be known as Christianos. Well, in the first century even. Well, not centuries later, but they were first called Christianos at Antioch. But the Nazarene is what we called ourselves. We weren't being called that. We weren't being called Nazarene by the man that accused Paul. Well, we have these traditional terms that we're very familiar with, like Lord and Yeshuas, Christos. These are all foreign words, foreign to the culture that Yahusha, the Messiah, grew up with, and certainly his people. The authentic Hebrew terms are what we're restoring. This is a restoration. Yahuwah, the name of the Creator, Yod, He, Uah, He. And Messiah's name, who came in his name, Yahusha. Yahusha, meaning Yah is our deliverer. And I'm going to pay more attention to these words because they're the original true words. They aren't going to change because truth is the foundation. So, and then instead of using pagan inherited words and adopted terms that were used formerly for objects of worship by pagans, we're going to go ahead and use the word El or Elohim, sometimes Eloah, but it means strength or strong one. And the tribe that we call the Jews is really the Yahudim, the descendants of Yehuda, the man Yehuda, one of the 12 sons of Yaakov, or Jacob, they call him. Nazarene, that's what we're going to call ourselves. And we're identified at Yirmiyahu chapter 31, verse 6. It's translated as, well, on the hills of Ephraim, the Nazarene will arise with, and say, let's go up to Sion. This is our first identification in Scripture as a prophetic identification, and we're identified in Acts 24, verse 5 also. You just look those up. And we're guardians or branches or watchmen. And Yisrael are all those in a covenant relationship that are descended from Yaakov, possibly or not. But even if you're descended from Yaakov or Jacob, or the man they call Israel, if you're descended from him and you're not obeying the covenant, then you're not really Israel. You're cut off, even though you are a descendant. But we're not here to judge. We're just here to point that fact out from Scripture. So we're the branches, and that's why we're called the Nazarene. Okay, now Malachi 4 starts out in the fourth verse saying, remember the Torah of Moshe. This is the end-time restoration, preparation for his return. This is it. Remember the Torah of Moshe, my servant, which I commanded him at Horeb for all Yisrael, laws and right rulings. See, I am sending you, Eliah, the prophet, before the coming of the great and awesome day of Yahuwah. That's what they call the day of the Lord, but we don't call it that. And he shall turn the hearts of the fathers to the children, and the hearts of the children to their fathers, lest I come and smite the earth with utter destruction. And so remembering the Torah given to Moshe is how we are to prepare for the return of Yahusha. This is how we do it. We go back to the covenant. Now we're going to look at the covenant right here. Now this is a shorter version. It doesn't have all the words, but it's the ideas. The first commandment or instruction is, I am Yahuwah, your Elohim. Have no other before my face. Number 2, you do not bow to images. In other words, we're not to do the zodiac thing. Number 3, you do not cast the name of Yahuwah, your Elohim, to ruin. Number 4, remember Shabbat to keep it Kodesh. Now, Shabbat is the 7th day of the week as a commemoration of creation, because he created the heavens and the earth in 6 days, and on the 7th day, he blessed the day and rested. And as he rests, we also rest, according to Hebrews chapter 4. And Kodesh means to set it apart. Number 5, now you notice the first 4 is the relationship with him. Now here's the rest of the commandments, how to love your neighbor. This shows love. This is a covenant of love. This is how we love him and show our love. Now, number 5 is respect your father and your mother. Number 6, you do not murder. Number 7, you do not break wedlock. Number 8, you do not steal. Number 9, you do not bear false witness against your neighbor. And number 10, you do not covet your neighbor's wife, house, field, servants, or anything that belongs to your neighbor. And by doing these things, we love. That's what we're really trying to do. It's not a hard thing at all. It's a yoke. It's a light yoke. The eternal covenant of love, and it's a marriage covenant. And Deuteronomy 5 reminds us at verse 22, these words Yahuwah spoke to all your assembly in the mountain from the midst of the fire, of the cloud, and of the thick darkness with a loud voice, and he added no more. And he wrote them on 2 tablets of stone and gave them to me. Now that's Moshe speaking. So we're to love one another. That's the new commandment Yahusha gave us. So let's not get off on tangents and waffle. Let's just love one another. Now the Shema is a Hebrew word some of you are familiar with. It means to hear and obey. Now watch how this emerges from this text. Let he who has ears to hear, let him hear. Now he probably said the word Shema. The voice of the living Torah, the Aleph Tah, which means in some ways eternal love, it cries out, hear, O Yisrael, Yahuwah our Elohim, Yahuwah is one. And you shall love Yahuwah your Elohim with all your heart and with all your being and with all your might. And these words, which I am commanding you today, shall be in your heart, and you shall impress them upon your children, and shall speak of them when you sit in your house, and when you walk by the way, and when you lie down, and when you rise up, and shall bind them as a sign on your hand, and they shall be as frontlets between your eyes. And you shall write them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates. So it's all about the path. That's what it's about. What path are we on? Yahusha called it the narrow way, which is the word direct in Hebrew. It means a path. And but here's the question. Are there many roads to heaven? Are there many pathways to get there? A lot of people think, oh, sure, there are. Well, that's because they have another yoke. The yoke that we just read, those 10 commandments that teach us how to love, that is what we all are pursuing. We're all pursuing love. Some pursue it through witchcraft, which is also including the astrology and all those things. That's all rebellion. And it's rebellion against those 10 words, those 10 commandments. They teach you how to love. You can't find it in the zodiac. You have to go to the source. But the roads to heaven, there's only one, and it's a person. So this is the seminar that I've entitled Human Traditions, and we're going to look at those as the other ways to heaven that people have adopted. And you see, these are reflected in men's traditions called religions. Religions, which is the root of the word actually means to rebind. It has to do with ligaments in your muscles. To rebind the connection that was broken. Human traditions in his face. Because see, we often forget who's looking. And the objective of this seminar is to contrast the human traditions, which are the false paths, with the will of Yahuwah, which is the way of truth. And it's also called humanism. Humanism is an atheistic approach where achievement of utopia is pursued. And they take every possible way but the right one. They tried to build a better government. The first kingdom on the earth was basically pursuing a way to make it utopian existence here on earth, make heaven on earth, and straighten out everything. The one world government and the one world religion. And there is a movement in the United Nations now called the United Religions Initiative. It's going to be abbreviated URI. Some of you have heard of it, some of you haven't. And there's the logo for the URI. It's a United Nations movement, and it's going to be resisting. This is the yoke of Satan, is what that is. There are many roads to heaven. That's the whole objective. Now, the goal is a world political authority, and we are going to see a totalitarian political monstrosity emerging and focusing and concentrating and consolidating its power to unite the whole world under one regime. Now, the word regime is not a scary word. It means government. But often, men's governments are very cruel. But it's posing as a religious institution. It's really a political monstrosity. There's two fellows on the earth that everybody's attention is always drawn to, especially when they replace them. And one of them is in the midst of retiring now, and most often they die. It was over 400 years ago that the last one retired while he was still alive. But he's called the Papa, or the Pope. And there's another one that's equal, if not even more so, interesting to most people, and that's the Dalai Lama. That means the highest monk. And they're both titled His Holiness. Now, that, if you're spiritual, and you're pursuing the true Creator, Yahuwah, that is an abomination. That title is an abomination. There is no one righteous, not one. Not one. You know this, Scripture, you've sown in your heart. And you call no man His Holiness. You wouldn't do that. And they have a lot of processes that they use to make you feel holy yourself. They do controlling operations. Now, strongholds you hear about strongholds coming out of teachers all the time. What they are basically are false reasonings. They're ideas that you are trapped in. You need to get out of those things because they're binding you up. Now, we know that they invent these techniques to improve your spirituality. They use chakras, and they say, your chakras are blocked. And they tell you about these 7 chakras and, to reach nirvana and all that. Nirvana is another word for oblivion to these people over here, the monk. And then they use these techniques called smudging. They take incense or sage or another kind of sweet grass and they burn it. And it's supposed to control the forces and remove these negative forces. Wake up. Burning sage. He's about to smudge. Anyway, Ezekiel 8, verse 16 starts out saying, and he brought me into the inner court of Yahuwah's house. And behold, at the door of the temple of Yahuwah, between the porch and the altar, were about 25 men, with their backs toward the temple of Yahuwah, and their faces toward the east. This is your sunrise service, is what it is. If you've ever participated or heard of that, that's what this is. And the 24 priests, plus the high priest, made 25. There were 24 orders. Now, and they worshiped the sun toward the east. Then he said to me, have you seen this, O son of man? Is it a light thing to the house of Yehudah that they commit the abominations which they commit here? For they have filled the land with violence and have returned to provoke me to anger, and lo, they put the branch to their nose. Now that's kind of like the smudging thing, He's smudging over here, that fellow's smudging. These are just diagrams, but the idea is there, Now the figurehead of this Dalai Lama, he's the head of the Tibetan Buddhists. you know. And he was evicted by the Chinese government from Tibet, and he has been living in exile in India for decades. His real name is Lamo Dundrub. Okay, the force is very strong with this one. I'm just showing you, they're just human beings. We can have fun. Now, which would Satan, the yoke that the world has on it, the yoke is Satan's yoke. Now, Messiah, Yahusha, said, my yoke is easy and light. What would that be? What would his yoke be? Yoke is teachings. That's his teachings. His teachings are easy. There's 10 of them. We read them. Don't hurt your neighbor. Don't bother your neighbor's wife. Don't steal your neighbor from your neighbor. Don't murder your neighbor. So that's a light yoke. You know, it's easy to not do that, you know. The violence that was in the land and in all the land is caused because they're not keeping the commandments. You teach your children the commandments, they raise up, everybody keeps the commandments, everything's fine. But now crime is out of control, and there's only one reason, because we withheld the yoke. Now, they invented these 7 sacraments in Catholicism, but which is it that Yahuwah taught us to obey and partake of? The 7 sacraments? Can you find that anywhere in there? Or the 10 commandments? Are we to say rosaries and earn merits or indulgences for visiting relics? And what they mean by relics is dead body parts, pieces of people. And, hey, we're going to go see Ralph's thumb. Let's go see it. Look at that. They've got her all propped up in that chair all together. It's all together. And they're rotting. They're sitting there rotting. Are we to practice yoga, which is a word that means yoking. Yoking with the forces. And you know the forces are actually demonic entities. Are we to walk in circles around our object of worship? We're going to see a little of that too here. Do you think that helps? You know, and dudes don't ordain other dudes. You know, there is a process that was used when the priesthood was going on in the book of Leviticus, and you'll notice the right ear, the right thumb, and the right toe. Certain processes were done, but there's no temple now, and we can't do that. Here's some stupa. Here's a stupa, and there's another stupa. The stupa is the, I like that word, don't you? Anyway, the people are walking around the stupa because the stupa has a force inside that they are honoring. They're worshiping it. And the same thing's going on here, and the same thing's going on over there, because this is an ancient practice that they carried over into their, modern day behavior. And there's that word, behavior. Some of you might remember that word. It's called circumambulation. Take the circum out, and you've got ambulation. To ambulate means to walk, to amble. Circumambulation is to walk in circles. These people are doing it here. Those people are doing it over there. Those people, all these people are doing this, walking around. If you see the close-ups, you'll see the people in there. And it seems like we're just walking in circles. And that's exactly what they're doing. They're walking in circles, and that's all that's happening. Anyway, this is another illustration of another problem that's actually the original problem. It's the source of all sorcery, and it's called the zodiac. Now, a lot of people are being led to believe that the zodiac is important. It isn't. It's just made up. You're not to put animals in anything in the heavens above, in the earth below, or in the waters under the earth before you, and give any honor to them or any regard. Now, these are a couple of objects in time. They're lost in time, but their meanings are forgotten. What they are, you can figure it out. This little fellow over here on the right is saying, at first I was like, but then I was like, We don't know what the wreath is normally. And this is an Islamic thing. They whirl around this black stone that's inside this box. They're mysterious because they don't really unfold the meaning of what they are. They don't interpret it for you. But do not be carried away by false teachings. Ephesians 4:11 says, "And he himself gave some as emissaries, and some as prophets, and some as evangelists, and some as shepherds, and some as teachers, for the perfecting of the set apart ones, to the work of service, to a building up of the body of the Messiah, until we all come to the unity of the belief and of the knowledge of the Son of Elohim, to a perfect man, to the measure of the stature of the completeness of Messiah, so that we should no longer be children, tossed and borne about by every wind of teaching, by the trickery of men, in cleverness unto the craftiness of leading astray, but maintaining the truth in love. We grow up in all respects into him who is the head, Messiah, from whom the entire body, joined and knit together by what every joint supplies, according to the working by which each part does its share, causes growth of the body for the building up of itself in love. So this I say, and witness in the Master, that you should no longer walk as the Gentiles walk, in the futility of their mind." We just saw some people walking. Remember? They were walking, but it wasn't doing them any good. They weren't obeying the Ten Commandments. Now here's a question. What is pluralism? The answer is it's humanism's attempt to promote a false well-being in an ignorant public that hopes there are many roads to heaven, promoting political correctness above all. Intolerant people are not, or they're shunned. Like, oh, those people are intolerant of all these other diverse things. Diversity is another word for it. Diversity? Did Yahusha say, you need more pluralism? You have to be diverse. You have to be accepting of all these things. Yahuwah is going to come with fire and wrath. Yahusha never promoted such things as pluralism, diversity of belief, liberalism, interfaith ecumenical dialogue, or toleration of other trees. Now let's see, what are we saying? What's a tree? Why are we using trees? Because in Scripture, there's code words. They mean things. The trees are sources of teachings. Do you remember that one tree that stands out in all of our memories? There was a serpent in that tree. It was whispering lies. What were the lies all about? What was it? It was a religion. That's what it was. And the dragon, or the serpent, seeks to feed everyone in the fruit of the tree of religion, holding humanity captive to his teachings. That's his yoke. And he has a lot of different, teachings that are all against the true easy yoke, against Yahuwah. Psalm 119. Wow. Psalm 119. Starting at verse 9, it says, "How would a young man cleanse his path?" That's what we're talking about, path. "To guard it according to your word. I have sought you with all my heart. Let me not stray from your commands. I have treasured up your word in my heart." These are code words. The word is his commandments. And in my heart that he's talking about is his vessel, his inner heart, that I might not sin against you. In other words, rebel and disobey. "Blessed are you, O Yahuwah. Teach me your laws. With my lips I have recounted all the right rulings of your mouth." He said these are all he gave us. And this is it, All the right rulings of your mouth. "I have rejoiced in the way of your witnesses as over all riches. I meditate on your orders and regard your ways. I delight myself in your laws. I do not forget your word." See, all these are code words for the same thing, and that's the Torah, the instruction. Yahuwah's word is truth. It never changes. It doesn't waffle around. It's not going to modify itself for different time zones and different periods of men's traditions. It's reality. It's not religion. It's something you can trust in. You build your house on his truth, and you will not be washed away when the storm comes. Yahusha said to him, "I am the way and the truth and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. Now that doesn't sound like there's many ways. He just said the opposite of that. And these men, they will actually tell you, oh, there's many ways. At the highest levels, they'll tell you that. Yahuwah warned us not to make a covenant with the Gentiles, nor give our children to them in marriage. We're not supposed to say, well, we have to be diverse and accepting of other people and tolerant of their beliefs. That's not what he's saying here. Exodus 34:12 starts out saying, guard yourself, lest you make a covenant with the inhabitants of the land where you're going, lest it be a snare in your midst. But break down their altars and smash their pillars and cut down their Asherim. I won't even say that. For you do not bow yourselves to another mighty one, for Yahuwah, whose name is jealous, is a jealous El. Lest you make a covenant with the inhabitants of the land, and they whore after their mighty ones, and slaughter to their mighty ones, and one of them invites you to eat of his slaughterings, and you take of his daughters for your sons, and his daughters whore after their mighty ones, and make your sons whore after their mighty ones. See? Now, this is an abomination, for people to get together at the highest levels at the United Nations and all sit together and go, I'm legitimate. I have a way to heaven. Deuteronomy, or Devarim, chapter 18, verse 9 says, when you come into the land which Yahuwah your Elohim is giving you, do not learn to do according to the abominations of those Gentiles. This is a symbol of Judaism, which is also a mixed tradition. It is. It embraces Torah, but it's a mixture, And, of course, we have other things there. At the left is pictured a multicultural conference of world religions, and it's a promotion of the United Nations. They want you to do it. So it gives you insight into who's leading this world, who's really in charge. Deuteronomy, or Devarim 32, starting at verse 39, says, see now that I am he, and there is no Elohim beside me. I put to death, and I make alive. I have wounded, and I heal. And from my hand no one delivers. For I lift my hand to the heavens, and shall say, as I live forever, if I have sharpened my flashing sword, and my hand takes hold on judgment, I shall return vengeance to my enemies, and repay those who hate me. And Yirmiyahu reflects the same sentiment there in Yirmiyahu 10, verse 2. Thus said Yahuwah, do not learn the way of the Gentiles, and do not be awed by the signs of the heavens. That's the animals that people imagine. For the Gentiles are awed by them. The Gentiles have this concept called dharma, and it's you've heard of karma. Well, it's principles of righteousness, but it's not Yahuwah's principles. They have this idea of namaste, the bowing, and they put their hands together like this and bow. We're going to see a little bit more of that, but it looks like he's catching a fly, doesn't it? Doesn't that look holy? Now, Yahuwah said, do not learn according to the abominations of those Gentiles. Okay? And they say, well, Our Lady up here says, what difference at this point does it make? Well, it makes a point all through time because Yahuwah does not change. In Roman society, this is something that you are going to really love. It might even make your visit here, or the time you're spending watching this, it might even help you say, well, that was worth the time, just knowing that. Well, you've heard of an inauguration, right? If you have a new president or a new mayor, we're going to inaugurate a new mayor. Well, it's actually a pagan priest that was called for that. That's actually an adopted principle and practice. It's learning the ways of the Gentiles. What did we just say? We don't do that. Well, they inaugurate in spite of that. Anyway, here we go. In Roman society, the augur was a priest and an official in the classical world, especially in Etruria and Roma. The Etrurians were people lived before the Roman Empire. It was in Italy. But the word augur is a mutilated form of avi and gero, and it means the direction of birds. Now, when birds take flight, they just take these little paths together. And depending on which paths they would take, it was like interpreting the entrails of a goat or some animal. It was the same principle. These priests were standing by waiting for the birds to take off, and then they'd hold this little thing called a lituus. And the lituus was a little thing that they held, like a wand. And they watched through it, and they interpreted the path of the birds as they went. And of course it looked like, it's all, nonsense, but it's something that people are easily tricked, and they're carried away by winds of doctrine, Anyway, the wand of augury is what it was. Now, taking auspices is also related upon the word birds. It's talking about birds. There's a little bird down there, and these guys are saying, "Hey, dude, check this out. Now, watch this. Did we remember seeing the lituus? It's augury. It's taking auspices, inauguration, and it was, to detect the future. It was a way of forecasting the future. Prognostication. Now, you see the shape of that, right? Oh boy, forget about it. What about the wand? Well, what's that? Where did that come from? It's really creepy because they have a way of blending things together. It's called syncretism. They take objects, behaviors, and things, and they say, well, you know what this is? This is actually a shepherd's staff. Yeah. Well, why does that one look like a snake? What's going on there? This guy's a machine to make him forget about it. It's another coincidence. It's not a coincidence. Now, here's another coincidence. You see the right hand on this statue, which was actually the pagan image of Jupiter of the Romans. They renamed it Peter, and they propped it up. It's got a little sun disk halo, like the Buddhist statues have halos too, because it's all sun worship. It's part of the zodiac thing. Well, the right hand has two fingers up. He has two fingers up. These are code signs. And his two fingers are up as well. And the two fingers represent spiritual and temporal authority. In other words, they're ultimately the authority. In 1 Kings 19, at verse 18, it says, "Yet I have left me 7,000 in Israel, all the knees which have not bowed to Baal, and every mouth which has not kissed him." They still kiss this. For centuries, they've been running through kissing this toe, and they've worn it smooth. You don't kiss it. Don't kiss statues. Well, and by the way, I spelled Baal. That's an actual proper name of a deity that they worship. Many of you may not know that. And if you translate that Hebrew word, Baal, into English, it's Lord, Lord. That's the definition. They replaced his name with another word. It's called pseudonym, a false name. Pseudo, false, nym means name. Now watch this. Pluralism is a scheme to socialize society in unbiased multiculturalism. You like these big words? How do we determine the bad tree and those who eat from it? You can identify them by whether they're eating from the bad tree or the good tree. And the good tree is the tree of life. The tree of life is going to give us life. In 1 John 3, verse 10, it says, "In this the children of Elohim and the children of the devil are manifest," meaning revealed openly. "Everyone not doing righteousness is not of Elohim, neither the one not loving his brother." See, it's about love. Pluralism has a universal religious objective. Constantine I sought to universalize the world under one religion. It was called Catholicism, which actually means universalism. And it was under penalty of death. He was the high priest of the Apollo sun deity. Now, the World Council of Circuses, you'll have to look it up and watch other videos to find out what we're talking about there, but the World Council works diligently to unite all the religions under one head, and that head is to be the Pope. And ecumenical is another word. We're going to look at the definition of that. Don't be frightened by it. But global religions have summits occasionally, every so often. They all get their religious people together. Now, pluralism is the definition itself is the condition of being multiple or plural. Now, this is against Yahuwah's orders. Number two, a condition in which numerous distinct ethnic, religious, or cultural groups are present and tolerated within a society. Did Yahuwah tell us to go ahead and tolerate those people? Let them go ahead and do what they're doing, and you should intermarry with them, because that would be diversity. Well, we're told not to do that. Number three, the belief that such a condition is desirable or socially beneficial. Now, we're also programmed with symbols. If you've been watching any of my other teachings, it's all about programming, you know. You see this coexist sticker and sign all over the place. Sometimes it means different things, and they're not always the same components, but they kind of lend themselves to this word, to coexist. So the United Religions Initiative of the UN promotes the coexistence of all these religions together. The coming New Age religion is going to embrace it. And now the word ecumenism. Ecumenism is a noun, and it's a movement promoting unity among Christian circuses or denominations. It's also a movement promoting worldwide unity among religions through greater cooperation and improved understanding, you know, of one another's faiths. It's acceptance, which is not what Yahuwah told us to do. The World Council of Circuses formed after World War II as a part of the United Nations. Now, according to Webster's dictionary, ecumenical means pertaining to the entire inhabited earth, and it's universal in extent. The ecumenical movement is central to the interfaith dialogue. Oh, and you'll notice the solar kind of appearance to this. If I just strip all the other elements away, you can see that it is solar. And this is another thing that's Roman too. The wreath around the Earth's image there is the United Nations emblem, and it is a Caesar image, meaning universal rulership, you know. The laurel wreath encircles the world. Now, the URI's statement of purpose, here's the purpose of the United Religions Initiative. And this is their own statement. Here it comes. To promote enduring daily interfaith cooperation, to end religiously motivated violence, and to create cultures of peace, justice, and healing for the earth and all living beings. And it sounds so nice. And yet they will be violent. To remove violence, they will become violent. That was what the Inquisition was all about. Violence to end the differences. They wanted everything to be the same. The uniting of all religions is the goal of the Theosophical Society. Now, many of you have never heard of the Theosophical Society, but actually it was the first attempt to unite this thing. And it's the yoke of Satan, as well as the World Council of Circuses. Now, what is the Theosophical Society? It was founded in New York City, in 1875 by Helena Blavatsky, Henry Steele Olcott, and William Quan Judge. Its objective being the investigation, study, and explanation of mediumistic phenomena. Hey, that sounds scary. Well, it is. It's Spiritism. Spiritism was really big at that time. Those of you who are fond of the author Arthur Conan Doyle, he was the heaviest and the most prolific promoter of spiritualism. And this was an offshoot of that. Its shamanistic and occult seal is depicted here. The Ankh is present, and the swastika, which is a solar image. And the Om symbol is also, it's a Hindu serpent and dragon. And then you've got the hexagram, which depicts, in their interpretation, heaven and hell. Now here's the goals of the Theosophical Society. And this is present in the URI as well. Now, to form a nucleus of the universal brotherhood of humanity without distinction of race, creed, sex, caste, or color. And number 2 is to encourage the study of comparative religion, philosophy, and science. Number 3, to investigate the unexplained laws of Nature, or I call it reality, and the powers latent in man. In 1889, you can do the math, it was 14 years after it was formed, Blavatsky told a group of theosophical students, so that you see they're training people, they're training them, that's why they have students, that the real purpose of establishing the society was to prepare humanity for the reception of the world teacher when he appeared again on earth. Who's the world teacher they're expecting? The anti-Mashiach. Now, here's a patch from that same organization, the URI patch. Now, the wreath of Caesar is again pictured here with their symbol. The URI promotes a lot of different symbols. You know, they don't know which one to choose, I guess. But anyway, it's talking about a world ruler. And the anti-Mashiach, or anti-Messiah, is the world teacher that they're awaiting. It's all about this sun worship. And these are more symbols that are interpreted here different ways. And of course, some people are afraid of certain symbols, and this symbol is just the seal of David, or Daud, the king of Israel. It's $2 is all it really is. Anyway, Matthew 3, verse 10 says, "And the axe is already laid to the root of the trees." Now, who's speaking? Does anybody know who this is that's speaking there? I think it's Yehuchanan, the immerser. I think it's his cousin. The trees. The axe is already laid to the root of the trees. He's talking to these Pharisees that came to see him and be immersed, to repent. He said, who warned you of the coming disaster that's ahead? You know. Anyway, they were hooked into men's traditions. The trees are the root of teachings, the teachings of error, you know. Every tree, then, which does not bear good fruit, is cut down and thrown into the fire. Now, the trees represent religions, human traditions. That's what this seminar is discussing. The trees, the human traditions. And there's all kinds of symbols for their trees. This tree is identified by that. That tree is identified by that. Different trees, you know. And the promotion of pluralism seeks to make all beliefs appear on equal footing. But they are not, because the truth is singular. It's not plural. Here's the objective of jihad, just for your information, in case you hadn't noticed. The Creator, Yahuwah, does not mix light and darkness. He will judge every person according to their acceptance of His covenant. You don't make up your own name. You don't name yourself. He allows in a very highly structured order throughout His universe. And obedience to Him is imperative because He's the owner. He owns you. He owns the earth. He owns the universe. And if you're not obeying the owner, then He's going to destroy us, you know, those that don't accept it. Now, it's mediated through Yahushua HaMashiach. That's the Messiah. Human traditions are depicted in this illustration here. There's all kinds of images that represent things, but they're all human traditions, and they're thought to be good things, you know, happy things that pursue joy and peace and love, you know. But they don't end up with, you're not going to find love in any of these pursuits. It's called idolatry, and they're not of Yahuwah, like the bunny rabbit and the egg and the tooth fairy and Santa Claus. And if you change His laws, that's wormwood to Him. He sees the Sabbath is now Sunday, the day of the sun, the first day of the week. He didn't say, well, later on it's going to change. Later on there's going to be a change in this one commandment. The fourth commandment is going to have a change. This is an eternal sign to remember him as creator. And if we change it, then we've modified it. And man did that. He did not. The last of the 6 commandments are acceptable to both Wiccans and Christians, but it's the first 4 commandments that are problematic. Yahusha said, if you love me, you shall guard my commands. That's Yahuchanan, or John chapter 14, verse 15. Now, 3,000 years from now, Yahuwah's people will still be Israel. That's what he calls us. And they're still going to exist. We can read this from Yirmiyahu, or Jeremiah 31, verse, right here. I think it's 31, verse 37. But it says, thus said Yahuwah, who gives the sun for a light by day, and the laws of the moon and the stars for a light by night, who stirs up the sea and its waves roar. Yahuwah of hosts is his name. If these laws vanish from before me, declares Yahuwah, then the seed of Yisrael shall also cease from being a nation before me forever. Thus said Yahuwah, if the heavens above could be measured, and the foundations of the earth searched out beneath, I would also cast off all the seed of Yisrael for all that they have done, declares Yahuwah. Now we know that we can't even search out the earth beneath. There was a fellow that was just yesterday sucked into a sinkhole in Florida, and they gave up. They said, well, he's only maybe 50 feet down, but we can't get to him. He's buried. He's dead. They can't even risk any more of their lives to go down and find him. So we know that they can't search out the earth beneath. And we can't search out the size of the heavens. All we can do is guess. We can't find that. But Israel is going to remain forever, as will his Sabbath. We must not listen to the teachings of the bad trees. Remember the tree, the first tree. All religions are designed to rebel against Yahuwah. Disobey him. That's what that means. Because that's witchcraft. That's rebellion. Their teachings are false, and they all lead to death. The first tree that was followed led to death. Matthew 12, verse 33 says, either identify or make the tree good and its fruit good, or else identify the tree as rotten and its fruit rotten. For a tree is known or identified by its fruit. Brood of adders, how are you able to speak what is good, being wicked? For the mouth speaks from the overflow of the heart. The good man brings forth what is good from the good treasures of his heart, and the wicked man brings forth what is wicked from the wicked treasure. And I say to you that for every idle word that men speak, they shall give an account of it in the day of judgment. For by your words you shall be declared righteous, and by your words you shall be declared unrighteous. So we have Yahuwah's words given to us. And if we read Deuteronomy chapter 4, 5, and 6 together, we'll see it all appear. Now in Deuteronomy 4, starting at verse 7, it says, for what great nation is there which has Elohim so near to it as Yahuwah, our Elohim, is to us, whenever we call on him? And what great nation is there that has such laws and righteous right rulings, like all this Torah, which I set before you this day? Only guard yourself and guard your life diligently, lest you forget the words your eyes have seen, and lest they turn aside from your heart all the days of your life. And you shall make them known to your children and your grandchildren. The day when you stood before Yahuwah your Elohim in Horeb, Yahuwah said to me, assemble the people to me, and I make them hear my words, so that they learn to revere me all the days they live on the earth, and teach them to their children. It doesn't sound like he's planning on ending those words at any time. Now, what they call Joshua, the book of Yahusha, chapter 1, starting at verse 5, the very first part, the sixth book of Scripture, basically. It says, no man is going to stand before you all the days of your life. As I was with Moshe, so I am with you. I do not fail you or forsake you. Be strong and courageous, for you are to let this people inherit the land which I swore to their fathers to give them. Only be strong and very courageous, to guard, to do all the Torah which Moshe my servant commanded you. Do not turn from it right or left, so that you act wisely wherever you go. Do not let this book of the Torah depart from your mouth, but you shall meditate on it day and night, so that you guard to do according to all that is written in it. For then you shall make your way, your path, prosperous, and act wisely. Have I not commanded you? Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid, nor be discouraged, for Yahuwah your Elohim is with you wherever you go. And Yahusha said the same thing. He said, and see, I am with you always until the end of the age. Matthew 28:20. And in chapter 24, one of my favorite parts of Scripture is, and now fear Yahuwah. This is the guy they call Joshua. His name is Yahusha. And now fear Yahuwah, serve him in perfection and in truth, and put away the mighty ones which your fathers served beyond the river and in Mitzrayim, and serve Yahuwah. And if it seems evil in your eyes to serve Yahuwah, choose for yourselves this day whom you are going to serve, whether the mighty ones which your fathers served, which are beyond the river, or the mighty ones of the Amorites, in whose land you dwell. But I and my house, we serve Yahuwah. So there's no pluralism. Now here's the entire matter concluded. In Ecclesiastes, there's a Shlomo, or Solomon, wrote in chapter 12 of a book called Koheleth, which means the preacher. Koheleth sought to find out words of delight and words of truth, rightly written. The words of the wise are like goads, and as nails driven by the masters of collections. They were given by one shepherd. And besides these, my son, be warned, the making of many books has no end, and much study is a wearying to the flesh, or of the flesh. Let us hear the conclusion of the entire matter. Fear Elohim and guard his commands, for this applies to all mankind. For Elohim shall bring every work into right ruling, including all that is hidden, whether good or whether evil. So we see when the preacher or some teacher tells you that was for then, and we live in a different society, and we're not that people, then what's that saying here? This says this applies to all mankind. Do this and you shall live. Luke 10, at verse 26. And he said to him, what has been written in the Torah? See, he's answering a question. How do you read it? And he answering said, you shall love Yahuwah your Elohim with all your heart, and with all your being, and with all your strength, and with all your mind, and your neighbor as yourself. And he was quoting Deuteronomy 6 and Leviticus 19. And he said to him, you have answered rightly. Do this, and you shall live. We have that on Yahusha's word. Baruch haba b'shem Yahuwah. Blessed is the one who is coming in the name of Yahuwah. He said we would not see him again until we said, Baruch haba b'shem Yahuwah.